here's something that I always recommend, because we all have trauma, right? All of us do. Everybody on this call has trauma in some way, shape, or form, right? And it can be very, very difficult to separate the trauma from the work. And I just want you to know, you don't have to do that. That's very difficult. You can bring your trauma into a space if you feel safe, of course, right? If you feel safe enough to say, hey, I've experienced this, right? It could be anything. I've experienced this type of trauma. If you feel safe enough in the space to do that, I would say do that. And if you don't feel safe enough, I would highly recommend asking other people in your community that you are safe with. It could be friends, it could be family, it could be co-workers, a place where you can unpack some of that trauma, right? It's not okay for us to dump our trauma on people that we're working with, but it is okay to share, right? As we feel safe, and also as people open up capacity for us to do that. Because trauma is constant, right? You can open your phone right now, pull up your favorite social media, and you're going to find some way, somehow you could be triggered by anything. It could be a meme. It could be a video. It could be a post. Anything can trigger your trauma, but it's always good to have a safe space for you to land, to be able to unpack that and to do the healing work that it requires, right? Because everyone, like I said, everyone has trauma and everyone has experienced something bad within their lives. And it's not to say that we brush that stuff aside just to show up for community. You cannot show up for community well if you're holding on to all of that trauma and you're not doing anything to try to unpack it and to talk about it with folks, or or at least to let somebody know, hey, this is how I'm feeling today. Oftentimes I've seen leaders in particular, I've seen leaders show up with their trauma, and they have this, they tend to lash out on folks that they work with because they've got this trauma and this thing that's been festering within them. And they haven't done the work, right? When people say, oh, you got to do the work, part of doing the work is talking about it. It could be, I'd highly recommend having a therapist if you can, or if you folks are like, well, I can't afford a therapist. There's apps now where you can they can pair you with someone that you can talk to. There's just certain things. There's hotlines and things that you can call for folks to talk to. Like, this is an information age. So there are resources out there that doesn't require you to be paying $200 every time to talk to somebody, right? There's ways to do that. And I think it's important, if you're going to be a leader, that you must be unfortunately, as a leader, that's just what it is. We tend to be the example, right? And if you're wanting to lead people into a space of healing and wanting to show people that healing is possible, that you can heal from your trauma, it's up to you as a leader to start doing that work on yourself. So whatever that trauma looks like, I don't want to trigger anybody by naming any traumas right in this moment, but you know what your traumas are, right? And you know what you need to tap into. And a lot of times, I'll speak for myself. Like, for me, grief is a really, really big one in my family. Like, we tend to grieve a lot. And so for me, making sure that I'm doing the necessary things to release that grief, and knowing that grief is actually love, right? I grieve hard because I love them so hard, right? And so because I know that, that gives me the agency to want to say, hey, I need to do this work and unpack, because I could be working with someone who also is dealing with heavy grief or complex grief, right? And so that's just, as a leader, you want to show up for the work well. You don't want to have, and you're human. Don't get me wrong. We are not superhuman by any means, right? We have limited capacity just like everyone else does. But I think it's important, if you are wanting to lead people, that you do some of the unpacking of your trauma so that you can show up for the work well.